everybody, I'm Jason Lee. Welcome to the Philly Sports Convo. This is episode number 17. We'll get to our guest in just a second. One of the great young voices covering sports these days. Really looking forward to talking to her. First, a quick reminder, if you want to support the podcast, I appreciate that. Great way you can do it. Go to shop.phillysportsconvo.com. We got a cool merch shop there. Sweatshirts, t-shirts, sweatpants, all kinds of other accessories, mouse pads, desk pads, coffee mugs, tumblers, the whole nine yards with the Convo logo on it. So please check that out. Shop.phillysportsconvo.com. Also, if you're looking for something to do on a Tuesday night, it's a lot of fun. I host a trivia night in Warminster at the Blue Bar on York Road between Street Road and County Line Road every Tuesday night from 7 to 9. It's a lot of fun, great food, great drinks, great prizes. It's a good crowd too, so please come on out and join me on Tuesday nights. Now, let me get to our guest. I'll quit yapping and finally bring on the real star of the podcast here tonight. So, gosh, what doesn't she do? She's on the radio. She does podcasting. She writes columns online. She's all over the place and really one of the great young voices covering sports today. It is my pleasure to welcome Haley Taylor Simon to the podcast. Haley, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, good. How are you today?
Doing great. Now, I know kind of hockey's your forte, correct? Would you say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
We will talk a lot of hockey, of course, but you span all sports, so we'll hit the big four sports. Before I do that, so I kind of alluded to all the stuff you do. Can you just kind of give us a synopsis? Because you're kind of all over the place, and I admire that. You are very aggressive, you're very driven, and I think that's awesome about you. So tell everybody where they could find you, where they can read you, where they can see you, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do radio, so I actually do our YouTube producing for the morning show on the Fanatic, so I do that. And then after the radio, I do a St. Louis Blues podcast. So that is on YouTube called Locked On Blues. I also write and cover the Flyers for Philly Sports Network. And then I do my own podcast called Haley's Hot Take, where it's just covering hockey. So it's a lot of hockey, but a lot of sports.
I have to ask you, how did you get in with the St. Louis Blues? I mean, we know you're a big Flyers fan. How did the whole Blues thing happen?
So it's funny enough, my one friend, Russ Cohen, who's in the press box with me at the Flyers games, was like, hey, have you ever thought about doing a hockey podcast for another team? And I was like, not really. Like, I only care about the Flyers. And he told me there was an opportunity with the St. Louis Blues, and they were looking for a podcast host. So I decided, you know what? Why not branch out and do something? So I got the job, and now it's been exactly 1 year doing it.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, and listen, I know sports is a what have you done for me lately type of scenario, but I was still surprised that they fired Craig Berube. I mean, the man brought them their first. Was it their first ever cup? Was it? I think it was.
First
right?
Ever cup, 49 years in the making.
Yeah, I mean, and so that was in 2019, and what was it, 22 or 23 when they fired the guy?
Yep, so they fired him this past December,
okay.
Which, honestly, it's my biggest frustration when it comes to hockey. The coaches are always the first ones to be fired, despite the bad moves that the GMs make, which is a whole other thing, but believes now to kind of redeem his name again.
Yeah, no, listen, I thought that was I thought that was awesome that he rebounded quickly and deservedly so. I mean, how cool was that? The guy is an interim coach and he wins the Stanley Cup. I thought he was one of many coaches that the Flyers didn't give enough time. I mean, we could do an entire podcast just on that, whether it's Berube or Peter Laviolette. I'm still a big fan of. I mean, even going back in the day, guys like Ken Hitchcock, who were fired way too soon. I'm hoping that ends with Tortorella. What are your thoughts on Tortorella?
I think so. I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, do you think Tortorella's going to get fired?" And I like him. I think that he is a player's coach. I think that he kind of has this demeanor, maybe to the public, that he's not the most welcoming person. Being in the locker room, seeing how he interacts. I think he's everything that this team needs, and the young guys do learn from him. So he is the right coach. Maybe not forever, but for the next couple of seasons, I think he'll stick around.
Yeah, I know everybody says that like after 5-6 years, his style tends to wear on a team, but we're still within that window. And I'm like you, I'm a big fan of his. I've always liked the tougher coaches as opposed to the quote unquote players coaches. The only thing, was I guess last season, the whole situation with him and Sean Couturier, I wasn't a big fan of how he handled that. What were your thoughts on that?
No, but that's who he is.
Yeah.
And I just remember this one press conference that he had, and he was like, "It's between Sean and I. I don't care what anybody else thinks." And Couturier went up and he said, "I know he doesn't care what anybody else thinks, but the way that you handle, interacting with your players, usually doesn't come out of that locker room." And Couturier was very upset about what happened. So he did speak a little too much to us, but I mean, there's so many conversations that we don't see.
Yeah.
And of course, the one conversation that got, let out to the public, of course, had to be this whole controversy. But I think that it was a miscommunication that just got a little bit too escalated.
Yeah, no, that's very well put. I will say I like how he guided the team through a very tough situation. The Carter Hart situation, obviously I'm not going to get into, what he's accused of doing. That's just an awful situation. But from a strictly hockey standpoint, you had the starting goaltender basically taken away without, I was going to say without warning. I guess maybe they did kind of see it coming, but the point is it did happen rather suddenly, and I thought Tortorella did a great job of guiding the team through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation because even Danny Briere talked about this today that, Carter Hart is still technically a part of the organization. And I think for the players and just their headspace, Tortorella did a really good job on just reminding them, hey, we're here to play hockey and just to keep it going. I can't imagine what some of the guys have been going through personally, knowing Carter and dealing with this type of situation.
Yeah.
But Tortorella always says his door is always open to talk to anybody that wants to talk. And I'm sure there's players that did that from him. But it was just, I have to tell you, it was a very weird next couple of days after Carter left. It was.
I can imagine.
There was a whole vibe, and they immediately stripped his name off of his practice locker, and it just was kind of walking on eggshells. But luckily, they do have a great support staff with the Flyers organization, and they have people that genuinely care about the players.
Yeah.
So I feel like that just made it better for the players that had to actually deal with this.
Yeah, the Flyers, and I've been in the Philly area my whole life. I've been a Flyers fan my whole life. The Flyers have always been a classy organization. I mean, even in the years when they were terrible and not making the playoffs, you couldn't say that they weren't a classy organization. They weren't a good organization in that regard. And since we kind of stumbled on hockey, let's just kind of keep that hockey thing going.
Okay,
you
cool.
mentioned the press conference today with Danny Briere. I know you were there. You wrote about it for Philly Sports Network. It's online right now. People can check out your article. Very well written, by the way. I read it before right before we came on here. What stood out to you about what he had to say today?
Yeah, so a lot of things. So I feel like people initially listen to this press conference and they're like, oh, Danny is just saying, no, I don't think so, and all these things. But for me, Danny Briere, he did capitalize on the fact that for this draft, they are looking for a center, which is a huge piece that we didn't really have before. We know that they were lacking a center, but hearing that clarification now makes me feel a lot better about the organization because Danny is so aware of what needs to be done for the Philadelphia Flyers. He also said that free agency this year was not going to really be a big factor for Philadelphia. For me, I was a little disappointed in that due to all the awesome free agents. I think this is the best free agency we're going to see in the next couple of years. So a little disappointed to hear that. But I also believe that Danny has a plan. And he said that, this year, 10 draft picks, next year, 10 draft picks. And he's open to trading up for picks. He's open to trading down for picks. He's open to doing so many things that guys like Chuck Fletcher just wouldn't do in the past. And he also, and this was something that I took away that I thought was really interesting. He said personally, he loves scouting players and that's his passion. But he also trusts, like guys like Brent Flair. And, for me, listening to Danny today, I got the sense that they know who they're going to go after. He didn't name a name, but he seems very confident that at 12 overall, they're going to be able to select the guy that they want.
I had the same reaction you did when he talked about not pursuing free agents. But, it's obvious that they have a plan, and they're going to go about it methodically. They're going to stick to their plan. But especially this past season when for a while it looked like they might actually make the playoffs. You think to yourself, you know what, maybe, if they sign a big-time free agent, maybe it could kick them up a few notches quickly. But do you think slower is the way to go? Do you think he's doing it the right way?
I sure hope so. It's very unpredictable right now with what's going to happen, but I do trust that Danny is making all the right decisions for the Philadelphia Flyers organization, and he genuinely does care about the success of the team. I mean, obviously, he has his career basically being majority in Philadelphia, and he does love the team. His family lives around here, so I do believe that there is a personal side to this where he wants to see it succeed. I can't say that it's a mistake
Right.
not attacking free agency well, but at the same time, who knows? I mean, maybe he's not, he's in the works of making something happen. I don't know, and maybe he doesn't want to give too much information away, but I have to trust him.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I agree with. I agree with you there. You do kind of have to trust him until he gives you a reason not to trust him. And I think overall, him and the team of him and Keith Jones. And I was so shocked when the Flyers announced that Keith Jones, I mean, this guy's got a national broadcasting job. He's on TV. He's on local radio. You would think, not that there's no pressure in broadcasting, as you know, there certainly can be. But compared to running a professional sports team, I would think the pressure's a lot lower being in broadcasting. But he took the gig, and the both of them together, I think, are doing great. And I think it's just what the Flyers needed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's the perfect duo. I mean, you could even add Dan Hilfery into that too and
Good
call
point.
it a trio.
Yep.
But they all work really well together. And the one thing that I like about Keith Jones is how honest he is. And I feel like because, Jones has been in the media for such a long time, I was shocked because I love that TNT broadcast. I was like, oh no, he's leaving.
Yeah, he was great.
But
yeah.
it was amazing. But I think that he knows that the fans want to be let in. They want to know what's going on. And they tell you as much information as they can. And that's something that Flyers fans didn't receive in the past, especially the past couple of seasons before their leadership. So, action that fans have, and they feel like they're a part of this whole process.
Yeah, and like you said, his background in broadcasting, he always just seems to know the right thing to say, and he just seems like such a likable guy. So even when it might not be a topic that fans want to hear, coming from him, I think it's a little more palatable because he is such a likable guy. I mean, and look, I'm a lot older than you. I go back to when Bobby Clark was the GM, and no disrespect, he's a legend. But he never told, he kept everything close to the vest. He never told the fans anything. And it is so refreshing having two guys, and like you said, three guys actually, if you include Dan Hilferty, who are so open with what's going on with the team. And so, at least outwardly, they seem to really care about the fans. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no. And one thing about Dan that I really love, at practice, I'm up in the press box, so I can see everything. And when there's fans in attendance, Dan will go down and he will shake their hands and actually get to interact with the fans. And that's something that I think is so special. And he creates this personal relationship during moments like practice where he doesn't have to do that. So
That's
I
cool.
love seeing all the interactions going on.
That is very cool. So, all right, let me ask you this. So, I mentioned I'm a lot older than you. I'm probably like twice your age. You're in your mid-20s, right? If you don't mind my asking, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the Flyers haven't been good in a long time. Yet, reading you on social media, you're a huge Flyers fan. What's the best team that you remember in your life? Do you remember the 2010 team that went to the finals? Do you remember that?
Unfortunately. And I say unfortunately
Yeah, right.
it's the closest I've ever been to seeing them win a cup. That entire playoff run was insane. And I was lucky because I was like, oh, this hockey team's going to be good for such a long time. And
Right.
It wasn't. So 2010, obviously, the best team that I've ever seen and probably will see.
Yeah, I remember that well. I remember the '97 team that got swept by Detroit in the finals. Oh God, that was awful. And Terry Murray said that they were choking, which he was right. He got fired for it, but he wasn't wrong. And I mean,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, and you've probably heard stories about this, Haley. When I was a kid, the Flyers went to the Stanley Cup Finals twice in the '80s against Edmonton, '85 and '87, and
Oh yeah,
I think it was it '87. One of the years they took them to 7 games.
'87.
Yeah, okay. Oh, see, there you go. Yeah, with Ron Hextall, he was the MVP on a losing team. And I remember asking my mom, if the Flyers win, can we go to the parade? She said yes, which was great. But but it's been 50 years basically, almost 50 years since their last cup. Knowing what you know about the team, knowing what you know about the methodical way that they're building, how far away do you think they are?
So my honest opinion is any given season, anything can happen. Being said, it's not going to happen this upcoming season.
Right.
I would realistically say in about 4 to 5 years. And again, this all, determines basically how Michkov pans out, Oliver Bonk, how he pans out. We have a couple draft picks that we have a lot of our marbles in the basket in, basically. So we have to see how they pan out. I do believe, however, though, there is something really special going on with this Flyers team. And it's not necessarily the players that are on the active roster now, because I don't think that, we're going to see Konechny win the cup with the Flyers. But I think the culture is coming back again, and that rubs off on players, which is why we saw a team on paper that shouldn't have even been on playoff contention be in playoff contention all season. But again, we have guys like a Jamie Drysdale who we acquired, and he's a good defenseman, so as long as he stays healthy, and that could be the future. But maybe in a couple of years they'll be in the playoffs, but I can't say cup until about 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
Anything can happen. We saw it with the Panthers.
Well, that's true. That's true. And as we record this, we're recording this on Thursday the 20th. So it's Game 6 tomorrow night, correct? So that will be Friday night the 21st, right?
Unfortunately.
So you're pulling for Florida then?
Yeah.
You are?
I have been.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
I have to tell you, I get invested into hockey teams and I don't even care. I don't care about these two teams. I really don't. But for some reason, I just feel like the Panthers just deserve to win. I know everyone's like, oh, bring the cup back to Canada. I'm like, that's cool. But then the Edmonton Oilers had beat the Flyers, as we talked about, twice in the cup final. So I'm like, why are we going to root for a team that did that? Also, the thing about the Panthers that I like is Bob. I like Bob Borowski.
Yeah, that's right.
I like Vladimir Tarasenko. Yeah, there's so many players that I like. I even like Matthew Tkachuk. I wish that he played for Philadelphia. But no, this series is stressing me out completely. And anytime there's a Game 7, even if I hate the two teams or I don't have any interest in the two teams, it stresses me out.
Really? Even if your team's not involved, it stresses you out, really?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Why is that?
I don't know why, because I feel like I'm just very sympathetic, and I feel for the fans of the team that's going to lose. And I put myself in that position. It would be so, and again, no connection to these two teams, but the Philadelphia Flyers would be the team to go to the finals up 3-0 to have a reverse sweep on them.
Well,
I know that sounds crazy, but
Well, it was 2010 when they did that, right? Wasn't it 2010 when they were down 3-0 to Boston and they came back? Yeah. Of course, then Boston wins the cup a year later.
Well, it's fine when we do it.
Yeah, right. Yes, it is fine when we do it.
Which sucks, but it's fine when the Flyers do it. But for another team, I just feel so bad for all the Florida fans.
Well,
20 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Is it up to 20 now? I mean, and that's the thing. A lot of people, and I kind of felt this way for a little bit too. There's just something that doesn't sound right about hockey in Florida. But then you look, the Tampa Bay Lightning have some cups. The Panthers are on the at least the precipice of winning a cup. Although if they lose Friday night, I mean, I don't know.
It's done.
Yeah, I mean,
it's done.
They got to be getting nervous
too. In the last 5 years, the team that won the Eastern Conference has literally been a Florida team. So,
has it been that long, really?
So dominant in Florida.
Oh.
Yeah. The last time a team won in the Eastern was the Boston Bruins in 2019, who fell to the Blues in the finals that year.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's unbelievable. All right, so
Even
yeah,
Florida.
well, yeah, I'm with you. I'd like to see Florida do it. But to me, it's like if they don't do it tomorrow night, if they don't do it in Game 6 in Edmonton, if they go to a Game 7, all the pressure's on Florida. I don't know how that ends up.
Yeah.
I don't know. So what do you think? You
Well,
think
it's gonna end
Florida
up
in
with
7? What do
Edmonton
you think?
winning.
You got a
No.
prediction?
Yeah, the Oilers, if they go to 7, they're gonna probably win. And I hate to say it, I really do because I was really arrogant. I go into work every day and I tell this one guy I work with, I'm like, oh, you know, how's your Oilers doing? And then now he's doing that to me. He's like, how's the Panthers doing? And I'm like, I don't like being wrong about hockey. And
Who's an
for the
Oilers
past
fan
couple
here?
seasons, well, he's not an Oilers fan. He has like a parlay.
Oh, got it. Okay, okay.
So he did like this crazy parlay. But the past 3 seasons, I predicted the Cup winner. So this year, I predicted the Dallas Stars, and then they choked. So now I'm like, I can't be 0 for 2 in one season. It's so bad.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. All right, I wanna move to baseball. The Phillies,
Yeah.
even though listen, you look at their record, they're one of the best teams in baseball. Maybe it's my lifetime as a Philadelphia sports fan, Haley. Maybe I'm just cynical as I'm getting older. I don't know, but I'm seeing a lot of the warts. I'm seeing the offense that still gets stagnant from time to time. It happened the other day in the final game against San Diego. It's a lot of the same things that cost them the NLCS last year. And to me, if the pitching hasn't been as dominant as it has been, this team wouldn't be nearly as successful as it is right now. It's been the pitching.
It has been. And, you can say, oh, Wheeler and Nola didn't do that well this past weekend. But the pitching has kept this team alive. You've seen that with Ranger Suarez, who's been lights out. But the bats need to come alive. And that's the problem with the Phillies is the lack of consistency offensively.
Yeah.
Everyone says, oh, Kyle Schwarber, Mr. June. Well, he hasn't had the best June. And then you look at other guys and Alex Stott. And Bryson Stott has been playing that great offensively. Harper, I guess you can say, is the only guy that really has been making an impact on most games. But I'm not going to say I'm concerned. I am going to say that I'm on the verge of being concerned because it is June. They're still the best team. But at the same time,
Well put.
these little things, yes. And these little things, they need to work on that. Getting on base is important. Bringing your runners home is important.
Sure.
You don't have JT Realmuto. So, besides him being a phenomenal catcher, he's a great hitter, and you don't have that. So there's a lot of pressure on these guys. They're supposed to be big bat players, and we got Trey back, so a lot of pressure is on him too because he just went right back into the roster. There was no going to AAA, nothing.
Right.
So
That's true. No
a
rehab.
lot of pressure on him.
Well, and not only is there pressure because of that.
I didn't like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought about that. That's a great point. He didn't do a rehab, but not only is there pressure on him because of that, I would think there's pressure on him because the guy who kind of took his place while he was gone, Edmundo Sosa, has been on fire at the plate, and he's actually a much better fielder. There was an article the other day, Marcus Hayes in the Inquirer, and I think Marcus's stuff is awesome. He's a great writer. He said that a lot of people were saying that Sosa, they should put Sosa in the outfield to keep him in the lineup, and he said no, they should put Turner in the outfield because Sosa's a better shortstop. It's not going to happen, of course, but what do you think about that? It's an interesting idea.
It is. Sosa, you could tell that he was playing for a spot, and the passion that he has when he plays, it shows. This guy shows up with 110% effort every single game, and I do believe that his feeling is better than Trey Turner right now.
Yep.
There is something that Turner needs to prove because you have a guy that not only can play your position well, but he can play it better at times. Sosa's batting has been phenomenal. So if I'm Rob Thompson, I'm going to have to make a decision. Okay, obviously we're paying Trey a lot of money and, we're not going to trade him. But is it worth shuffling him around to get Sosa on the field. Crazy concept, but I mean, if it's going to better the baseball team, then why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It's tough to take him out of the lineup with how hot he's been, and yeah, and again, he's got a really good glove. I mean, which is hugely important, especially at shortstop. You mentioned Rob Thompson. Some people question his pitching decisions with the bullpen here and there. Your thoughts on him overall? I mean, he in a lot of ways he just seems to fit this town very well.
Yeah, so I like him. I do think he plays it safe at time, especially with the pitching. I don't think he goes to the bullpen fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that sometimes that's an issue if a manager goes to the bullpen right away. But this season, if you see a struggling Zach Wheeler, you got to just take him out. But again, I do trust his judgment, and I do trust the fact that, he wants his starting pitchers to not lose their confidence. So there is a reason why he's doing things that he's doing. Just a couple of times I'm like, hey, maybe you should just go to the bullpen because it's not, good to get lit up and have that happen.
Yeah, right. So, obviously, you got to think the Phillies are going to be there in the end. They're definitely, they're at least a playoff team. We know that. But, and again, maybe this goes back to me being a cynical Philadelphia sports fan my entire life. I still worry about them choking in the playoffs like they did last year. If we can look into your Haley Taylor Simon crystal ball, what do you see happening this season? Do they finally do it? Do they at least get to the World Series? What do you think?
I'm so negative.
So it's not just me. Okay, good.
No. It concerns me that they're playing this well now, and I know people they're like, oh, they're playing well. This should make you feel confident. It doesn't. Because my fear is that they're going to go cold when it gets to the postseason. I think last year in the NLCS, losing to the Diamondbacks the way that they did was one of the most brutal things to watch because they were the better team.
Yep.
And that concerns me a lot because the season prior, going to the World Series, despite their loss in the World Series, I still felt good about them. Like, okay, this team can do it this coming season. And then they choked. So I don't know if I feel good about it. I'm sure they'll win if they go the wild card in the NLDS. But it's an NLCS where I'm like, okay, I need to trust in these guys. But at the same time, after last year's performance, and they basically have the same roster, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want them to win the World Series.
It's a concern because it seems like they get into these ruts where, if they don't hit home runs, they don't produce runs. They're not, playing small ball as they call it. They're not bringing runners. If they have a runner in scoring position with less than 2 outs, they can't bring them home. That type of thing, and that's what kills you in the playoffs. So we'll wait and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's hard to believe it's been 16 years since '08. I don't know how much you remember about that, but
too much.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
Yeah, I was at the '08 and '09 World Series. Super into baseball as a kid. One of the best, I think, experiences of my life was being able to watch the Phillies in that era up to 2012. I mean, I've never missed a season, so I've seen all the bad and all the ugliness, but I think back to my childhood, and the Phillies were such a huge part of it. So I'm hoping, I know it's been 16 years, but I'm hoping relatively soon we can see Bryce Harper especially win a World Series, because a player like that, you have to just get it for him at least. He's one of the best players in baseball.
Yeah.
And there's no way that he's going to end his career not having a ring.
Well, you hope. And listen, just because it seems like I've been overly negative in this conversation, just for those watching and listening, I love the Phillies. I have my entire life. I do think they're phenomenal. I'd much rather have the Phillies than, say, the New York Mets. Although, did you see that story, Haley, that they've been winning ever since Grimace threw out the first pitch? I think they lost their first game the other night, but they won like 8 in a row.
Yeah, it's insane. Somebody says that we need to capture Grimace and bring him here to Philly.
Yeah, right. But
oh my God.
But getting back to what you're saying about Harper, one of the things I love about him, what's he making? $26 million a year, but yet he's a guy who's making $26 million a year who can relate to the average fan. It seems like he's one of us, even though he has more money than we will ever see. But he can relate, and not a lot of multimillionaires can do that. But he's got that knack where he can relate to the average Joe. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes him so likable too. I mean, you look at Bryce Harper and you forget the fact that he has all that money and all that fortune, and you just see a guy that's passionate about baseball. And I feel like Bryce Harper is the kind of guy. And again, you saw the whole promposal thing that he did, where you could just go up and say hi to him, and he would just say hi back and not be like, "Oh, I'm better than you. I'm not going to say anything." So he is a guy that I feel like people do relate to, because he does have passion. And that's something that we don't always see out of our athletes here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, no, he seems to care. He seems to care, and I think that does resonate, as you said, with the fans. I want to move to the Sixers real quick, just in our remaining few moments here. Want to hit some Sixers, want to hit some Eagles. So we had to sit through the Boston Celtics winning the NBA title again, and I don't know if you have any friends from Boston, Haley, but
unfortunately,
yeah, a buddy of mine, he's on the radio in Connecticut, and he grew up in the area. He's a big New England sports fan, and just watching what he's putting on social media, it's enough to make you sick, because he had a post with all the banners that all the Boston teams have won since the year 2000, and it's astounding. But seeing them win depressed me, not just because of that. It depressed me because I look at the Celtics and I look at the Sixers, and I don't see the Sixers ever overtaking the Celtics as presently constituted. What do you think?
Oh my gosh, these two teams are separated by miles and miles. The way that the Celtics have been so dominant for so long just goes to show with their ownership. It goes to show with the moves that they make, the signings that they have. Sixers, they don't do the same thing. They're not as aggressive, and especially in that trade market, they're not aggressive enough. Nothing that the Sixers do compares to the Celtics. The Celtics are built to win. The Sixers are built to choke. And I do believe
that is brilliant. You should document that.
It's true, because you know what it is? Joel Embiid, everyone can admit it. He's one of the best basketball players in the league. But his support staff isn't going to help him succeed. And the thing with the Celtics is you have all these different players that really just work together that are so well. And I can go on and on about this, but it's not just about making one guy happy. It's about making a winning team. And the Sixers' biggest mistake that they ever did was getting rid of Jimmy Butler for Ben Simmons, because I am telling you,
Agreed.
If we still had Jimmy Butler, the Sixers could potentially have won a championship.
Okay, well, that being said, all the rumors about him possibly coming back at this stage in his career, do you want to see that happen? Or are his best days behind him?
No, don't want him.
Yeah.
If it was a little bit ago, I would say yes. But right now, obviously, he's not even just the age, but then it's injuries. I don't want that for this team. I want this team to get younger, and I think it's awesome that these guys are still playing, and credit to them. I just don't think that the way that the NBA is going, that a guy like a Jimmy Butler is going to truly shift the Sixers into becoming a contending team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's either going to be a guy like Jimmy Butler or a guy like Paul George, and even a guy, it's not going to change things. It's not going to change things. You still have, like you said, not a great support system around Joel Embiid. You still have Joel Embiid. He only played, 38, 40 games this season, yet he was still hobbling in the playoffs. And this is no knock at him, because like you said, he's one of the best players in the game today, if not the best. And we're lucky to have him here. But that being said, he's a big man, and it's a long season, and every year in the playoffs there's an issue with him. So if you're running the Sixers, okay, do you think maybe it's just time to just, let's just cut our losses, let's trade Embiid, and let's start over again? Are you ready to do that, or do you think we just kind of go with the status quo?
Yeah, and it sucks to say, but I feel like we've been trusting this process, and the process might have just processed. It's expired. So
Yeah.
It sucks because I do feel like there is so much potential within Joel Embiid, but the value that they can get back from him right now, you can get draft picks, you can get great players. I mean, there's so much, and
I
I don't
agree.
know how the market's looking, but what I do know is that it's better to do it now than to wait for a couple of seasons with him getting more injuries. That knee is especially concerning. So it all depends on what they get. If they don't really get anything good back, then keep him and work around it. But if you're able to get something significant, why not?
But the big question is, do you trust Daryl Morey to make it happen? I never understood, what the big deal was with him. I never understood why the Sixers, bent over backwards to bring him to town. What has this man won? He hasn't won anything.
I don't know, and I'm still trying to figure that out with him. I can't read him, and that's the thing about Daryl Morey. I just can't read him. I'm hoping that he does the right thing. It's weird because I feel like of all the other GMs in this town, you can really read them and you kind of know what their plan is. With him, I have no idea,
Yeah,
which
no,
is a little concerning.
yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't know. I mean, if I'm Josh Harris, at some point it's like, put up or shut up, okay? Like, we brought you here to bring us a championship. You haven't. They still haven't gotten past the second round, which is as far as they went before the process began. So, like, have the last, however many years it's been, has it all been a waste of time? I think it has been, to a point.
Well, maybe they can win the in-season tournament this upcoming season and get a trophy that way.
That thing's a joke, isn't
For
it?
those that are watching, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a joke, and the court in the in-season tournament is too damn distracting, if you ask me. But that's just me. It's just me.
Awful.
It is awful.
It is awful.
All right, real quick before I let you go, want to touch on the Eagles. Any concern? The whole thing with the Jalen Hurts press conference. He was asked the question about Sirianni. He didn't give his coach, kind of the seal of approval, if you will. Is something going on there, and should we be concerned?
I don't think so. I think Jalen Hurts, and the more you listen to him speak, you can even tell he's not always the best speaker. He talks in poems
He
mostly.
does.
He does. So I think at the end of the day, I don't think Jalen even thought twice about how he answered that question, and now it's being blown up. I do think, however, though, there might be frustration with how last season did end.
Yeah.
But until he says that, I don't want to speculate and say, oh, Jalen and Nick Sirianni are beefing. I don't know. But it would have been nice to hear Jalen say some more nice things about Sirianni. But again, I don't think Jalen thought twice about it.
What are your thoughts about Sirianni? I mean, especially after how things ended last year. Do you think he should have been back?
I would say yes for at least this upcoming season. You're going to have bad seasons in the NFL, and
Yeah.
there's no, putting it around. A 10-1 lead that was then just down the drain, awful. But I do think that the Eagles, however, can bounce back this year, and I'm sick of the excuses. The new coordinators' excuses. There's so many excuses with him. What I want this year is to see the football team succeed, and if they have a couple losses here and there, fine. But they cannot do what they did last year, where no win actually felt like a win. And there was no win that was that significant. Maybe besides the Dolphins, that was the game where I felt really secure.
Yeah, that was a
Every
good
other
one.
game, you really didn't feel good about it. And that's unacceptable. So I feel like Sirianni, he needs to give, Kellen Moore decide. He needs to just trust his coordinators, take a step back, and be a coach. Because he cannot do this whole, I'm going to run the offense again. No, that's done. Just be a coach, coach the team, and let your coordinators do the work.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the game plan for this season. He's going to be, as they say, the CEO. But here's the thing, and I'm not a huge Sirianni fan, but I do think he should have been given at least one more chance to come back this season. He's been. You look at his 1-loss record. He's got a Super Bowl appearance. You kind of you give the guy a mulligan for one bad season. That being said, this coming season, if the Eagles do bounce back, I mean, to me, he's in a no-win situation. If they don't do well, he's out of a job. He's gone. If they rebound, if they do well, if they get to a Super Bowl, if they win whatever, if they win the Super Bowl, it's going to be because of the coordinators. He's not going to get the credit for it. I mean, how do you see it?
I mean, at the end of the day, he has a job head coaching the Philadelphia Eagles, which I think a lot of people would want to be in that position.
Sure.
So if he puts his ego aside, because every single coach has an ego, no matter what,
Yeah.
he puts it aside. It's for the better of the Philadelphia Eagles organization, it's for the better of the team, then things will be fine. But if he gets a little bit too, distraught over the fact that credit is going towards the coordinators and not him, then he shouldn't be the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. No,
It's
I
the
agree.
team.
I agree. It's very well put. So, so looking ahead to this season, and obviously we're not even at training camp yet. Anything can happen. There could be injuries, but all those caveats aside, you look at the Eagles as they're put together. You would think they've got a good playoff run in them. How do you see the season shaping up?
It's going to be such a good season for the Eagles. I think that week one in Brazil against the Packers will be a really tough game because Green Bay is a good team. But overall, I think this team is going to bounce back. I'm sure the players are fired up after their horrible performance at the end of last season about making a statement again and showing everybody, hey, this is not going to happen again. You have Jalen Hurts, who everybody loves to underestimate. Every single person knocks Jalen down. I barely meet anybody that puts him up. You have all these guys that they drafted, a Cooper DeJean, who I'm excited to see, but then you also have guys from previous draft classes like a Jordan Davis that hasn't been playing the best, that has something to prove. You have just a lot of changes within this team, but you also do have a lot of veteran guys. So I do believe that this team is going to be a scary team. They're going to be a team that's out for kind of vengeance in a way after last season and how it ended. And they have the talent to do so. It's more of, can they execute and will they get out of their head mentally? Put last season aside, be the team they were the season prior, kind of like the Phillies. You have to just put last season aside.
Yeah.
Be that team before. And I do believe this team has the capability to win the Super Bowl. Now, can they do it? That's up to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we will wait and see. Well, Haley, the time has flown by. Before I let you go, and we talked about it a little bit at the top of this. Tell everybody again what you're doing, how they can follow you, how they can just follow what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to find me is on social media, especially Twitter and Instagram. So that's at Haley T. Simon. Super easy. All the links in my bios have all my articles, podcasts. So all my work is there. I make it easy to use. And again, besides, keep it simple, talking and writing about sports.
Love that. Love that. Actually, I want to ask you real quick. So, where does your love of sports come from? Because one of the things that I enjoy when I read you or when I hear you on the radio, your passion comes through in what you do, and that's going to serve you well. Don't ever lose that because you're going to go far with that. But
Thank you.
where'd that all come from?
I have to say, my dad, like, as far as I remember, I grew up just going to Eagles games, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies, and that's what I would do for fun. Like, um, most people, and I always jokingly say this, especially, being a woman, would ask for dolls for birthdays. I would ask for jerseys of different players that I liked. And that's always been my type of thing. And the thing about sports is, too, it is one of the most beautiful stories that you can watch. Anything can happen in a given season. And I think for me, especially with hockey being my first real love, um, there's all the action, all the fighting, and it just grows over time and it develops into such a passion to where that's all I want to watch and that's all I want to, experience. So having jobs in the industry has been literally me living out my dream because being able to talk to different players after a game was something that I always wanted to do as a little kid. I'm like, oh, I wonder how they feel about, this play that happened. And now I get to actually be the one to ask those questions.
That's
So
awesome.
it's really cool. And I feel like even though I'm in this, industry right now, I feel like my dad is with me too in a way because I'll call him every day. I'm like, hey, guess who I interviewed today? And he's like, this is so cool. And I'm like, I know, right? So
Do-
it's one of
do-
those things where
Does your
it's a
dad
family
kind of
thing.
live vicariously through you in that respect?
Yeah, I mean,
That's awesome.
T-Mobile sent me to Game 5 of the NLCS too, And I said to my dad, I'm like, hey, are you busy? And he was like, it depends. I'm like, we're going to the Phillies game. So I got to see Harper hit that home run next to my dad.
Oh my God, that's
And if it
awesome.
wasn't for me, yeah, and if it wasn't for having the connects and things like that happen, so anytime I get an opportunity to do something and bring him along or my mom or whoever, I always bring them because at the end of the day, like those are my people, and
I
if it
love that.
wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. So
Well, and they must be very proud of you, and rightfully so because you're doing some great things. But I want to ask you real quick before I let you go. You mentioned about being a woman covering sports, and obviously these days there's a lot more women covering sports. We've got Kate Scott, the first female play-by-play announcer ever for the Sixers, and she's phenomenal. If there's a young girl watching or listening to this right now who wants to go into sports and they're looking at you, listening to you, learning about what you do, what advice would you give?
it's a good question. So I would give just know as much as you can know and then add some more. I hate to say it, but being a woman in sports, no matter what, it's always kind of like you're going to be tested in a way. If it's by somebody listening to you, whoever, and they're always going to point out the first thing. It's not going to be about, oh, well, maybe this was a tough question that was asked. It's always going to be like, hey, they don't know anything about this. They don't know about sports. They never played it, so therefore they don't know it.
Right.
So if you have the facts that can back it up and more, no one can tell you that you don't know what you're talking about.
I love that. That is great advice. And Haley, I'm going to end by telling you this because you and I have talked via text, and I'm a fan of your work. I'm a fan of your drive and your passion. And do me a favor, just remember me when you're a star and I need a job. Okay? Can you do that for me?
Okay.
Haley, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope we can do it again real soon. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
It's been great.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. And everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 17 of the Philly Sports Convo. We'll catch you next time.